Okay. Great. Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started.
All right. Would you like me to begin by calling the roll and then following that go into webinar logistics?
Yes, please.
All right, we'll do. Carrie Akimi Hernandez,
Here.
Lisa Marie Alvarado, Abamel Chavez Hernandez, Ana Gonzalez, Gloria Huerta,
Present.
Andres Ramirez, Michelle Rousey,
Present.
Buolani Vasquez,
Present.
and Chair Randy Torres Van Vleck.
Present.
Martha Armas Kelly. Chair, we have quorum.
All right. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate that. All right. We'll now move to the land acknowledgement.
Or I can, if you don't mind, I'll very quickly go through just
Oh.
webinar logistics. We'll jump.
Yes. Thank you, Justin.
All right. Welcome everyone to the November 14th, 2025 Interagency Transportation Equity Advisory Subcommittee meeting on community engagement, policies, and practices. This subcommittee's focus will be on elevating diverse and historically marginalized voices and will advise the California Transportation Commission, California State Transportation Agency, and California Department of Transportation on how to achieve meaningful outcomes in transportation equity, environmental justice, and equitable economic opportunities, especially as related to transportation planning and programming. The meeting agenda is located on the Commission's website. You can find that at www.catc.ca.gov. Any document created for the subcommittee can be translated into any language needed. Email us at transportationeac@dot.ca.gov, and we'll have them returned to you as quickly as possible. American Sign Language translation is being provided for this meeting. You should see them on your screen. Live closed captioning is also available. Select the Show Caption tab at the bottom of your screen, and there are a number of language options available to choose from. Speakers, for accessibility purposes, we ask that you please state your name prior to speaking. Presenters, if you're on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translation. And for our members of the public, we welcome comments from the public. You should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you'll find the raise hand and Q&A tabs. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach an item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will call on you when it's your turn to comment. And alternately, you may use the Q&A tab to submit a comment, and committee staff will read that on your behalf. We ask you make your point in 3 minutes or less, and if for some reason we have many speakers on a topic, we reserve the right to limit to 1 minute if needed. Thank you all for joining us today.
Oh, Randy, we can't hear your audio now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Sorry. We acknowledge that the land that we now call California is the ancestral lands of over 109 nations, tribes, and peoples. The indigenous peoples of this area have a deep reciprocal relationship with the land as its original stewards. Their ways, methods, and traditions have contributed to California's rich biodiversity and have impacted the transportation network for the state. We stand with indigenous communities and are committed to partnering and advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. Our transportation network not only connects us to families, friends, work, and leisure, it connects us to our past and future. We embrace our past with a future commitment to inclusiveness and equity for everyone who calls this state home. And I respectfully acknowledge that I'm taking this meeting remotely here on Kumeyaay land, which is also known as San Diego, California. And I invite any of my fellow committee members to share where they're taking the meeting from and the ancestral homelands thereof. Committee member Akimi Hernandez.
Thank you, Randy. I acknowledge that I'm on the ancestral land of the Micho, Wapo, Pomo, Patwin, and Ohlone members, and that is also known as Napa. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We can, we'll now move on to public comment on non-agenda items. Justin, do we have any public comments on non-agenda items?
Thank you, Chair. Not seeing any requests at this time to make any comment.
Okay. We'll now move on to adoption of the August 18th, 2025 meeting minutes. Are there any members willing to make a motion to adopt the August meeting minutes? Member Rousey?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from August.
I second.
Thank you. Thank you, Member Vasquez.
All right, I will now call the roll. Gary Akimi Hernandez,
Aye.
Lisa Marie Alvarado, Abamel Chavez Hernandez, Ana Gonzalez, Andres Ramirez, Gloria Huerta,
Aye.
Michelle Rousey,
Aye.
thank you. Pualani Vasquez,
Aye.
Chair Randy Torres Van Vleck.
Aye.
Chair, the motion passes.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay, I'd like to introduce agenda item 5, update on feedback received from Senate Bill 1 application review. I invite Go
Sorry,
ahead, Camille.
before we move on, there's a hand raised in the chat. I'm not sure if it was for public comment.
Yeah, so Connie, I did see your hand raised. It looked like you were trying to get that in during the tab 3 item rather than tab 4. But Connie, you're now muted and free to comment.
Yes, hi. Connie Arnold, Disability Rights Advocate. And I'm not sure if you're going public comments item by item, because I'm interested in the engagement of your committee with the disability community. Can you at least answer that question first?
So you're looking to comment on the tab 6 item? Is that?
Yes, and in general, I would say that your presentation, as far as the picture doesn't show any people in wheelchairs, any blind people, any people who are deaf. So the engagement looks like it's only engaging with able-bodied people that has nothing to do with people with disabilities. That's in your representation, presentation, pictorial. And that's a personal public comment that I'm very concerned that you are misrepresenting in terms of the disability community, because we are the largest minority group in the United States in terms of we make up all different diverse backgrounds of people, both cultural, ethnically, and religiously. And you should be seeking input from our disability community. So I was particularly interested in item 6, and also just in general, making sure that you're inclusive of members of the vast disability community that are not simply represented by ILCs. I don't know if this was the proper time to say that, but I wanted to make sure I let you know my opinion. I've been a disability rights advocate for 35 plus years. And transportation is a crisis for people with disabilities, and particularly wheelchair users who don't have access to Uber and Lyft if you're in electric wheelchairs, and the robo taxis and everything that the California Public Utilities Commission is giving carte blanche of sanctioning inaccessibility and exclusion for our community.
All right, Connie, your 3 minutes have expired, but just to let you know, that is comment that should be reserved for tab 6 item.
Okay.
Thank you for your comment.
Thanks.
Member Kimi Hernandez, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Randy. Justin, is it okay to respond to that comment? So I want to thank you for your feedback, for your public comment, and just acknowledge that we have 3 members on our EAC serving this year. And I can't speak directly to their mobility needs. However, we do have one member who is using a wheelchair. I myself require a service dog, and we have a member who is blind. And we also wrote our vision, mission, and foundation principles to make sure that we include and consult on mobility justice issues, so, and specifically disability needs. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Member Kimi Hernandez, and thank you, Ms. Arnold, for your comment. I'm glad you can be here today to participate in the conversation, and encourage you to stick around for item 6, guidance for engaging with the disability community. All right, I'll go ahead and move on to item 5, update on feedback received from Senate Bill 1 application review. And like Matthew Yoscott from the California Transportation Commission to lead that item.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Torres Van Vleck. I'm coming through loud and clear, I hope. I didn't do an audio visual check when I logged in. And
Sounds good.
I will.
Thanks.
Awesome. I'm also going to share my screen. So give me one moment. Is the tab 5 header coming up for the PowerPoint?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to be with you all this afternoon, and I really appreciate the invitation. So yes, as you mentioned, I am going to provide an update on feedback received through the SB1 application review, in which we had several interagency equity advisory committee members contribute directly to project evaluations for our past cycle 4 in the SB1 programs. And so will introduce myself. I'm Matthew Yoscott. I am the Deputy Director for SB1 programming at the California Transportation Commission. And this afternoon, I'm also representing 3 members of my team, the program managers for the local partnership program, which is Lashara Ward, the program manager for the Solutions for Congested Corridors program, which is Naveen Habib, and the program manager for the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program, who is Beverly Newman Burkhart, and she is actually joining us this afternoon. So before I talk a little bit about the EAC's involvement on the SB1 programs, I think it's a little important to kind of provide everyone a frame of reference for the 3 competitive SB1 programs. I'm not going to go through the information on this slide, but briefly what I will say is our local partnership competitive program has access to $200 million in a fiscal year, 40% of which is competitive grant funding. The Solutions for Congested Corridors program is $250 million a year. So we just adopted a $500 million program of projects. And the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program is roughly $400 million per year. So that kind of sets the tone for the volume of funding decisions that our EAC members participated in supporting this past spring. So briefly, I want to cover some of the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee's involvement with the SB1 programs. So going back to cycle 4, which was the 4th iteration of our SB1 programs, during the winter and spring of 2024, commission staff worked with the Equity Advisory Committee to review our SB1 program guidelines, and it worked to incorporate their feedback as revisions to those guidelines, as well as our SB1 program's Transportation Equity Supplement. We did hold a standalone public workshop to discuss those changes in March 2024. And so this kind of sets the stage for, in a given 2-year program cycle, we usually undertake guidelines updates for the first fiscal year, which is ultimately the policies that govern the programs. And then the second year of that 2-year cycle, we are actually evaluating transportation projects to recommend for funding.
Matthew, sorry to interrupt. I don't think your slides are advancing.
Which slide am
It's
I
still in
on?
the title slide.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, that's not helpful. Sorry about that. Give me one moment. I was just telling my team yesterday that I'm technologically challenged. Sorry about that. Is it sharing the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Okay,
You might want to
good.
put in presenter view as well so that we could see the text more clearly.
How about that? Is that working? Is it larger? Or is it
Yes.
still?
If you
It
click
is.
slideshow, the text will become enlarged a bit and it'll look a little nicer. But
Yeah, I
can't
did
see
see that. I'm sorry about this. Actually, give me one moment. This is kind of embarrassing. I'm going to convert it to PDF. I think that would be easier.
Matthew, this is Sasha. If it's helpful, I can share your PowerPoint.
That would be helpful. Because I'm realizing in the PDF, I don't know if it's blown up all the way. Do you have access to it?
Yes, I just need Justin to promote me to a co-host, please.
One moment.
Thanks for your patience, everyone. And thank you, Camille, for calling out that I was talking about things that were not visually available on the screen. Thank you, Sasha. And I think it's still in the condensed mode, but maybe I'll talk while unless, are you able to make it presentation mode?
You can click from the current slide button right underneath home and insert. If you click from current slide, well, right there, yeah.
Well, it turns out I have just as much luck as Matthew.
Okay, then I know what I'm gonna do. I am just gonna share the PDF. Okay, is that a little larger? And this
Yeah,
is
that
my
looks
the
better.
third slide. Okay. I will take it from here. And again, please accept my apologies. Okay. So I described some of the interactions we had with the Equity Advisory Committee back in the winter and spring of 2024. So now I'm bringing us a little bit forward to this past winter, 2025, when we conducted, when we conducted solicitation of interest from Equity Advisory Committee members to actually participate in our guidelines project evaluation process. We had 7 members that committed interest to working with us. And so back in March 2025, we held an orientation to provide the participating EAC members an opportunity to familiarize themselves with not only the SB1 programs, but also the evaluation process. We also provided evaluation guidance documents and templates for each evaluator so that the process was hopefully as straightforward as it could be. And then during the spring of 2025, EAC members reviewed and evaluated SB1 projects for all 3 of the competitive SB1 programs. Specifically, we asked for their rating on the community engagement evaluation criteria, as well as equitable outcomes that the project applications were demonstrating. And EAC members were compensated for time that they spent evaluating SB1 applications. Then in May 2025, EAC member evaluations were directly incorporated into the overall ratings for the SB1 projects, which ultimately informed the final staff recommendations that were recommended for commission approval at our June 2025 commission meeting. And then most recently, just this past fall, EAC members that evaluated SB1 projects met with the SB1 program managers to debrief both their evaluations as well as to discuss what worked well with the process and what were some areas that we could improve moving forward. And I'll have a slide where I cover some of that feedback. But before I continue, I did want to provide a little bit more of a historical context. So going a little further back, we did actually work with the Equity Advisory Roundtable members who contributed input during our Cycle 3 guidelines process. And by the time we were evaluating Cycle 3 projects, the Equity Advisory Committee had been fully established. And so we did actually have EAC member participation in our Cycle 3 project application process. So with our upcoming Cycle 5 SB1 process, that would make the 3rd cycle that's been directly involved through our EAC. Are you all seeing the community engagement slide now?
Yes.
Okay. So the community engagement evaluation criteria is the particular area that we identified would allow applications to demonstrate not only the degree to which applicants performed effective, robust community engagement, but we also We also ask applicants to demonstrate how they've informed their actual project design and project applications using that engagement from their communities. So briefly, I'll say so in alignment with the Commission's racial equity statement, all SB1 nominations are evaluated based on their ability to create mobility opportunities for all Californians, especially those from disadvantaged or historically impacted or marginalized communities. Equitable projects must demonstrate meaningful and effective public participation in the decision-making process at the local or regional level, and particularly with communities that are disadvantaged or historically impacted and marginalized. We also, within each set of our SB1 program guidelines, we've developed what we refer to as the SB1 program's Transportation Equity Supplement, which is included to provide indicators and examples that applicants can use when responding to the community engagement evaluation criteria. And that supplement document was directly informed by feedback we received from the EAC over the past 2 cycles. And I do want to note that the community engagement evaluation criteria may be one of several evaluation criteria for any given program, but it is absolutely a critical component during project selection. For instance, if we have projects that performed no community engagement, or we're actually going to have impacts that the members of the community were opposed to, that information is taken into consideration as kind of above what the project was just rated in this category. So it is a very critical evaluation criteria. A couple last minute or a couple additional items that I did want to cover. One of the themes that we do like our evaluators to consider is, how does the community engagement that an applicant has performed influence the project? So that was something that we wanted EAC members to keep in the back of their mind as they were evaluating, because this criteria is not intended just to suggest whether or not good or robust community engagement was performed, but it's also intended to actually influence the projects themselves, to reflect the feedback that the community provided. And okay, now I'm going to get into the feedback that we received from our EAC members. I kind of separated it into 2 categories. So I'll start with what we heard worked well. And so this feedback on this slide is a summary of the debriefs that the program managers had with the EAC members that evaluated. But so we heard overall that the orientation that we provided, as well as the evaluation materials, were useful and easy to follow. We heard that having direct access to the SB1 program managers was very helpful in troubleshooting any issues, which we did have some issues with technology and accessibility to the applications. But I think we heard that for the most part, we were able to get each of those issues resolved in a timely enough manner. We did hear from members that they felt empowered to evaluate honestly, meaning if they were rating a project that they thought performed no community engagement, or maybe were lacking, that we would honor that they rated that project more poorly, and that poor, or I should say less favorable rating, would be integrated into the overall project ratings. And then we also heard from our members that expressed that by evaluating SB1 projects, it gave them a better sense of how funding decisions are made, and they expressed interest in wanting to participate in this process again. So I think we were very pleased with that feedback. Some areas that we thought could be, or that our EAC members thought could be improved, was for us to develop a more uniform system for actually being able to access the applications, so that they could have more uniform access to them. We were using file sharing, like FTP sites that I think were a little difficult to navigate. And so we will work to streamline how we make the applications accessible moving forward. We were provided some feedback that it would be good to perform a technology and application dry run with members ahead of time. Obviously, this could potentially be worked out by coming up with a more uniform or streamlined system for sharing out evaluations. But I think the feedback to actually go through maybe like an example application together is a great suggestion that we'll work to incorporate moving forward. We are also planning to require that all applications are remediated for ADA compliance. We receive applications in PDF format, and they're not always accessible through screen readers or other computer systems that are meant to assist with reading and evaluating. So we are going to move forward with requiring all applications to be remediated. And then we also heard that in some instances, if we could provide more specific references to places in applications where the pertinent information might be located, that would help guide and support evaluators in actually evaluating the material, which I think is a very good suggestion that we can work on. But I also want to be careful suggesting that we would not want our evaluators to read through the entire application if they're interested, not only to familiarize themselves with the projects, but to maybe pick out other areas that either projects were doing well or were not doing well. So before I wrap this slide up, I just had a couple additional notes I wanted to share. So with respect to EAC members returning to participate in our process, to evaluate again, we would absolutely welcome and encourage that participation from future EAC members. And we would even like to lean a bit on some of our members that would be returning to evaluate to be kind of like subject matter experts to assist us in making this process as seamless as possible for maybe new EAC member evaluators. I do want to emphasize that the EAC member evaluations directly influenced final staff recommendations, and that there were some instances of projects that were rated very highly by the EAC members that were actually elevated to funding recommendation, and that some projects that were rated less favorably were actually removed from funding recommendations based on how they performed based on the EAC evaluations. I want to also mention that input from the EAC members was shared during project applicant debriefs. So in the instances that there were unsuccessful projects, when we offer debrief sessions with applicants to better understand how their project evaluated, and we did use some of the feedback from the EAC during those debriefs. And we heard from our members that they felt directly involved in the project selection process, which is some feedback that we provided when we actually debriefed with them. We gave them more specifics on how their evaluations contributed to final staff recommendations. And finally, I do want to emphasize that every project that was ultimately recommended for funding in the SB1 programs was rated favorably in the community engagement criteria by an EAC member. So all recommended projects were evaluated by the EAC and had favorable ratings in the community engagement category. And so with that, I do again want to apologize for having a couple bumps in this presentation. Hopefully it didn't knock me too much off my stride, but I'm happy to answer any questions if any of our committee members have any, or take any suggestions at this time. So thank you, Chair Torres Van Vleck, for the time and the space.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. Clerk, should we do a member comment or public comment first?
That's set. Your discretion, Chair. We normally do public comment first.
Okay, do we have any public comment on this item?
Yes, I do see one of our attendees with their hand raised at this time. I'd like to call on Jeannie Ward Waller.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Thanks. Hey, nice to see you all, and thanks, Matthew, for the presentation. I wanted to follow up on this item just to make you all aware that Climate Plan and a number of partners just recently submitted a letter to the commission with some thoughts and follow-up to the SB1 award cycle from June. And one of our recommendations is, specifically related to how the EAC was involved in reviewing and providing feedback on SB1 applications. And we would just really urge the commission to make that feedback and the process of getting feedback from the EAC public. We think it's particularly important for, advocates like us to be aware of, how the EAC is providing feedback. And I think it's really great to hear Matthew, what you just shared about how that feedback did inform your scores and make a difference in the outcomes of some projects that were awarded. We would just, urge that to be public so that we know and can support the feedback of the EAC and how it's informing project decision making. And I think that's particularly important for those projects where there's like local community impacts or even local community opposition to some projects that could have significant impacts to the community and particularly vulnerable communities. We think that's most important. So would just urge that, want to make sure the EAC is aware of that feedback, and I'd be happy to share our letter with you all if helpful. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate you commenting and sharing that. Do any other members of the public wish to comment?
Not seeing any other requests from our public attendees at this time.
Okay, Member Rousey, I see your hand up.
I enjoyed working on the SB1 project. I am happy to see that you're going to be doing a walkthrough of a few projects with the members and training for them to do the work. I think that will help people get their footing more quickly and realize what they're doing and how to do and how to go about it. I personally found some of it a little frustrating at first until I did get my footing. So I think, like I said, that training I think will be really good. And like I said, I enjoyed the work and thank you for including us in that. And, I think one thing I found out when I finally did do the brief, that, how much the work that we do is impacted by the results and what happens with those projects. And I think going in, I did not have that realization of how much our input and our voice had at the table at the end results. And I think for future members of the EAC, they should know that. They should know that, their voice is taken highly in this matter. And so that they can, not that it would have changed my output, but it really was nice to hear how much my input was appreciated and was used in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rousey. Anyone else wish to speak on this item? Member Armist Kelly? Martha, we can't hear you. Your audio's giving us issues. Sounds like a internet issue. All right, do you want to try again? Oh, Member Armist Kelly, would you like to try making comment again?
me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So what I wanted to say is basically that I am very grateful for the participation and the opportunity to participate. And this is, when we hear people say or mention that information is not made privy, I have to take that heavily into consideration. And as we've had discussions in the past, I don't know if you remember when we used to have the discussion of the bike rack, or wherever we would have something that somebody had mentioned that we were going to do some kind of engagement, some kind of opportunity to do that work. We had discussed the fact that from it going into a bike rack or wherever it was at, where it was placed, that it would be brought back to the group again. And we would have the discussions or have that presentation and align the work with that. So I just want to say that for this instance in the SB1, that is a direct correlation with some of the work that we've been asked at and tasked as members and brought to the table and asked if we could possibly engage in that work. We had asked as part of RFP, so that SB1 initiative for the members that participated, that was a direct take home from what we had presented as an ask for the EAC and our participation. So it's really important to recognize that in the steps that we take, just as we were able to have that come full circle and participate, we do need to make sure that our audience and our community is made aware of those transitions, whether it was an idea, it went into concept, and then into a project. We work through that project and then the outcome. And that's something that we'll be discussing at the greater meeting at large. But it's something to think about as we do the work that we do. We don't have anything to hide. We want to make sure that people are aware and informed of how we develop these processes, how we integrate in these processes. And it's so important, like members have shown and community has indicated, that they want to be able to know how we perceive the information. Are we able to ask questions? Are we digesting it? Are we getting it? And I think Member Rousey for highlighting on the fact that at the beginning, it was very hard to understand how the work was going to take place, where to get your foothold into the work. But eventually she found her place, she found her niche. As minor as that might be, it's really important for the community to know that we are doing the work and we are engaging, and it's not just in litem, but actual practicum. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Member or Ms. Kelly. Appreciate you. Any other members wish to speak? Seeing none, we can close this item and move. Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate your time, and thanks for providing that presentation. It was a great experience to serve on to evaluate the applications, and appreciate you sharing the feedback and willingness to incorporate that moving forward. And I look forward to seeing the letter that was mentioned as well, and discussing potential recommendations to the program. Go ahead and move to item 6. Item 6 is guidance for engaging with the disability community, discussion and resource development. And our presenters on that item will be Cassidy Ellis, Gabe Corley from the Caltrans Advancing Community Engagement Office.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. My name is Gabriel Corley, everyone. I'm lead advisor for Advancing Community Engagement at Caltrans. And well, as far as our office, we lead in developing guidance and tools and training for conducting equitable engagement for our plans and our projects. And I'm joined today, as you said, by Cassie Ellis, who will facilitate a discussion today on how we can better engage with our disability communities. Some of the guidance and tools we've created are in the process of creating are the community engagement playbook, and some of these tools, actually most of these tools we've brought to this subcommittee before and talked about in depth. But they're the community engagement playbook, the equitable engagement toolbox, Caltrans engagement portal, and the public engagement plan template and guide. These tools really help plan and right-size engagement and identify general roles and responsibilities, identify best practices for engagement, and bring continuity from planning through project development. A lot of times, what's done in planning, what is heard in planning, doesn't make it all the way through the phases of a project at Caltrans. And so some of these tools, in particular, the Caltrans engagement portal is really going to help with that process. These all provide a good basis for equitable and inclusive engagement, but it's evident that we can do more, especially in the disability community space. And we'd really like to get your help diving in a bit deeper into how we can better serve our practitioners throughout the state on how to best engage with the disability community. And it's, we've been hearing it from our community engagement coordinators throughout the districts, throughout the state, that this is something they're really interested in and really could use some help with. So with that said, I'd like to turn over to Cassidy Ellis, who is our engagement planner leading this effort, to discuss how we can be more inclusive and reach more individuals through the disability community, from the disability community when engaging on plans and projects, and really make sure that their voices are heard. So looking forward to a great discussion. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, Cassidy.
Thank you. So I am Cassidy Ellis, and I'm in the Office of Advancing Community Engagement. And I'd like to just share a bit about what our guidance on engaging with the disability community, what that looks like now, as to kind of paint you a picture, and hopefully you can kind of see our gaps. Thank you. So a lot of our requirements right now are based in non-discrimination. So for example, the Americans with Disabilities Act. I'll kind of summarize or paraphrase what each of these say. ADA states that no individual with a disability shall be excluded from participation in or be denied the benefits of the services, programs, activities of a public entity. So Caltrans is the public entity we're talking about today. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973 similarly is about non-discrimination, but it's specifically about non-discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Then the California Civil Code section 54 through 55.2 is about making sure that people with disabilities or medical conditions have the same rights as the general public to the full and free use of streets, highways, sidewalks, walkways, public buildings, medical facilities, including hospitals, and etc. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the UNRRA Civil Rights Act, it's make sure that locations where public involvement takes place must also be accessible, and information must be accessible for persons with vision or hearing disabilities. So that kind of covers our legal guidance. I also did a brief search of our intranet websites. Those are websites that are only accessible to Caltrans staff. And so in the Office of Civil Rights, they had a manual on Caltrans Web Accessibility for All. It has guidance on how to make documents accessible. There's also the ADA Infrastructure Program, where the Caltrans statewide ADA coordinator sits, and they kind of are in charge of coordinating that our infrastructure is ADA compliant. And then the last thing that you can see on the screen here is some standard language that we include in all public-facing documents. Now, it doesn't always look like this. This is an example I took from an environmental document, but there will be some language like this on all of our public-facing documents that provides instructions on how to request alternative formats if the paper or online copy isn't the best option for the individual. Next, we do, like Gabe mentioned, we have an equitable engagement toolbox. It's a Caltrans internal website that houses a lot of different resources, trainings, guidances, templates, examples. And just one of the things that I saw there was the plain language training, which can be helpful for people who are neurodivergent. Oh, I see there's a hand raised. Go ahead, Miss Armis Kelly.
Hi, I think the area we're speaking of in regards to materials. So, for example, this meeting we're having right now, I am blind and I want to participate, and I get on the Zoom. How would I be able to process? And myself as a member would like to know this, because oftentimes people ask, how are you able to afford modifications or accommodations for folks that may not be able to see the literature? And when we're looking at the PowerPoint, I could only think that folks that are not able to see the PowerPoint, how would they be able to acquiesce the information? Is the information posted prior to for those that need that access? And if so, what is the process in that? And also, when you're talking about infrastructure and we have a meeting, before we go to a meeting, are we not supposed to look through the meeting place and make sure that it's accessible to the folks who are going to engage in that process? Because recently we had a meeting in Merced, and she was more than gracious, but our own member could not even get into the area to participate in even eating, because there was no way that her chair was going to be able to go. So she had to go outside. One can be gracious and be accommodating. It's not acceptable, because we have to have concessions so that anyone can participate, and whether it's interpretation, whether it's infrastructure so that there's access, or easement, or anything for that that person to engage. It's critical that we are aware of the process so that we as also EAC members can vet out that process as well, and see those things, have it in our purview, so that when we have our meetings, we are a little more conscious and aware. And yes, we have 3 members, but at the same time, we all were present and aware of certain things that have happened in any meetings outside of even the EAC meetings, where we did not stand in the gap, right? So we want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because that allows me to understand better how that process is vetted out and how it is mitigated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I agree that we could do a better job. There are trainings that reiterate these requirements all the time, but oftentimes it does take for something actually to happen, for it to wake people up to say, hey, oh, that's right. These requirements do happen, or these incidences do happen in real life, and we do need to be cautious of where we set up our meetings.
Cassidy, sorry, this is Alexis Lance, just chiming in from Caltrans. Martha, thank you so much for your comments, and I do think that we will work with you all to make sure that going forward, all of our EAC meetings that we're making them accessible not only for our members, but for the public as well. So I just want to thank you for bringing that up on the issues we have just within our own EAC and making sure our meetings are always accessible, which the team does work hard on, and we know there's more we can always do. So I just want to flag that and respond to Martha's comment on that end. And then, yeah, really looking forward to how we can make sure with today's conversation, we're providing that guidance to our staff for all of the work that Caltrans does. Thank you.
Michelle Rousey, do you want to go ahead and say something before I continue?
I think, as you talk about training and accessibility and including the disability community, I'm wondering if at all that some of us members who have disabilities could help you actively be able to help in that training process, because there's a lot of training that I've done with other groups as far as accessible language and other things that I think that would benefit not only Caltrans as a whole, but in your training process, how you engage with the disability and senior communities, and being able to look at it in another way through our eyes and our experiences, and more on a personal level, by having us interact with your staff. I think a lot of times inaccessibility is just like overlooked at and just not seen by people because it doesn't impact them directly. And so it's important for us to all remember that, we all have different access needs, whether it be visual, hearing, language, however, but we need to actively seek out solutions to that for our audiences and for the people we work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great that you guys are already so excited to help me with this effort. Before we move on to the discussion, I did just want to briefly mention that the draft statewide playbook, it is something that this subcommittee has seen before. It has a very brief section on participation strategies with engaging with the ADA communities, and it just includes some general best practices. But definitely there's a need and a desire for something that goes more in detail, and something that will actually help us answer these questions that we'll be discussing today. Okay, so let's start with our first discussion question. And feel free for anyone to raise their hand to share their experience. But our first question is, what's the first thing people should know about engaging with the disability community? And this question is kind of intended to get us talking and help us brainstorm. Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I think for me, it's just like, I just want to be treated like everybody else. And, just because I have a disability doesn't mean that I can't engage and participate the same way as anybody else does. I just need accommodations to do so. So remembering, that intellectually is different than my physical, and that I want to give feedback, I want to engage, and I want to participate like anybody else, and to include that kind of thinking to when we engage our communities and things like that. We want to include our communities, our seniors and people with disabilities in their access needs for transportation. And when we include them, we're including all populations, not just them. And then we provide a way to give access to everyone and not just the disability community or seniors. So thank you.
Thank you.
Member Kimmy Hernandez.
Thank you, Chair Randy. Thank you, Michelle, for your contributions. I think just to echo some things that you've shared, and Peggy isn't here with us today, but there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And so sometimes people may think that just because there's ADA compliance, that everything is all figured out. But we have people in our community that have, full, complete lives. They have children that they may be transporting. So they may have, different accessibility needs. And then, like I mentioned, I have a service dog, which they are not always initially greeted well with acceptance, and so there's different barriers that we face, and so yeah, I just think being open to listen and to a broad spectrum of needs.
Thank you. I see Miss Rousey.
Yes, I was wondering if we have a few people from our disability community here. Is there a way, and I'm gonna ask permission from the chair and you, if we could open it up at this time during these questions for the public too? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Member Rousey. Any members of the public are welcome to. We encourage your feedback on any of the discussion, the comments posed here. So if you'd like to comment on the questions, I encourage you to raise your hand. Member Vasquez.
Yes, so I was going to wait for the second question, but I think I'll kind of chime in on this one and wrap in the second one as well. And I think, Member Michelle really touched on something that, I talk about every time I talk in these meetings, is that, what's good for an 8-year-old is good for an 80-year-old, right? And so what's good for, a person that has this ability is good for this person that has another ability, right? And so one thing that I believe when I work in community is that when we have access to things, we don't necessarily understand the complexities that other people might have to live with and might have to kind of get around with. And I, a lot of times, will conduct community walk audits. And I think that's one of the biggest tools to getting community, to getting people, to getting engineers, urban planners, all of us to understand the complexities of transportation, of getting around our communities, is getting them to walk around and do a walk audit, do a bike audit. And what are the gaps within our community? How does this sidewalk feel? And when I do walk audits, I always have a wheelchair. I always have a walker. I have somebody who walks around who is blindfolded, so that we can all experience the walk with different accessibility options. And when you experience your world like that, you see it through a different lens. And let me just give you one quick example. We were walking on a sidewalk that had a bus stop shelter, which in most circumstances is a great thing, right? Most bus stops don't have a shelter. Unfortunately, this shelter, the way it was located, was very close to the curb. And there was no way that anybody that was trying to get around that shelter with a wheelchair, with a walker, would be able to get around that bus shelter. They would actually have to go back to the curb cut, get onto the street, and traverse that part of that street, on the street with the motorists, and get back onto the curb because there was no room for them to be able to get through. And so I think being able to understand difficulties like that, curb cuts that, you know, if you have vision, if you have inabilities with your vision and the curb cut points you out to the middle of the intersection versus to the way that you are walking, that's a real difficulty. And when we are planning our streets and we're designing our roads, those are things that we have to take into consideration. And when we are advocating, if we don't understand those complexities, those are things that we miss. And having those, you know, nuanced understandings are really important. And I think, you know, getting more people involved in community walk audits, but having those community members as well as those tools to get people to better understand how the difficulties in our communities to get around is really, really important.
Thank you, Member Vasquez. I really like that idea of walk audits, especially with the community members who may be disabled. I think that's a great way to really share a certain experience and for people to understand what are the needs that need to be addressed. Thank you. Any other comments?
Connie has, in the question section, has a comment about working with Richard Schaff and a few other people. I think it's a good idea. They're disability leaders that understand about transportation, the disability community needs, and many other aspects of disability living in California. And they would be a good resource for outreach and where to push some of this out so that we could possibly get more input from the disability community as a whole. Thank you, Connie.
Yes, thank you. Okay, I think we have a good amount of answers for question number 1. Let's move on to question number 2. Do you know of resources that could be used to educate staff about engaging with disabilities? And are there specific resources that you use? Member Vasquez?
Hi. So again, I would strongly suggest walk audits. And AARP has a wonderful, very easy to use walk audit guide that I really suggest every community utilize for walk audits. It is a very approachable guide to use. And they really kind of break down all the different steps. So that's a really great resource to use for walk audits.
That sounds great. Thank you. Member Rousey?
Yeah, in Alameda County, we have Access Alameda, which is a resource to find out about transit and different transit access for the community. I think it's bigger than that, though. I think it's not just about our multimodal walkable communities. I think this is a bigger issue about access and how we want to engage with the community and get their involvement to make purposeful change.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing those resources. Member Arnold?
If you're calling on Connie Arnold, are you looking to take up public comment at this time?
If that's okay, yes, I would love a public comment.
Okay. Connie Arnold, you're now free to mute and make your comment.
Thank you. Connie Arnold, disability rights advocate for 35 plus years, master's degree. My comment about involving the disability community is that you have to involve beyond the independent living centers. You have to involve and compile a group that is very inclusive of people with disabilities, from State Council on Developmental Disabilities, the developmental disability community, such as DRC, Disability Rights California, DREDF, Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund. You can involve the ILCs, you can involve the State Independent Living Council, you can involve the California Foundation of Independent Living Centers, you can involve Designing Accessible Communities, run by Executive Director Richard Scaff. And some of us are independent advocates, so you need to know how to get the information out to individuals that aren't associated with any particular organization that operate on issues, that have been longtime advocates and people involved in participation and speaking before the California Public Utilities Commission, the Judicial Committee, and the various elements of accessibility. Sometimes some of the ad hoc committees, but also a group of us met with David DeLuce on the 12th, and we had a whole agenda. And I would like to submit the email that was sent by Richard Scaff if I knew where to send the public comments, because I think they're very relevant to your discussion, including about a committee and a mock-up that does mock-ups of accessibility. And you can't rely on just on simply, oh, you're going to ask people with disabilities their opinion without knowing what the codes are. And a lot of times these public transportation officials, including Caltrain, who developed a new train with an inaccessible bathroom they called accessible, with a corner toilet, which was totally inaccessible for anybody in a wheelchair. So, you know, you've got to have educated staff that know what the codes are, and then you've got to establish, you know, an advisory committee, and you have to do mock-ups that show, here's what we've designed for accessibility before you start building it. And that also includes, you know, talking signs and the latest issues about the need for
15
the
seconds.
blind community. You need a permanent statewide Caltrans statewide disability advisory oversight committee, similar to structure of the California Walk and Bike Technical Advisory Committee, focused on disability community issues. And that composition can't just be people that just want to have an item for their resume. It has to be committed
Connie, your
advocates.
time has expired.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Connie Arnold. That is exactly the kind of detailed answer we were hoping to get from this group. Because we know that there's interest out there in engaging with the disability community, but staff were feeling kind of like, well, where do we start? And I think you gave us a lot of really great options on where to go and where to get help. And the idea of having like a council of people, I think that would be really helpful as well. Anything else about question number 2, resources that could be used to educate staff? Okay, then let's move on to question number 3. What organizations can help, and who else should we be connecting with?
This is Michelle Rouse. I think Connie answered a lot of this question in her public comment. And I'd basically say ditto. And, you know, just to make sure that we just cross a large groups of not only independent advocates, but agencies, and be able to click into their resources to be able to make a robust system that our voices are heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Akimi Hernandez.
Thank you. I recommend reaching out to Makai Freeman, and she's in Berkeley. She represents a few different organizations, but I can provide her contact information following up to this meeting. So I'll send an email with her contact information.
Great, thank you.
I believe in Berkeley.
Member Rousey, I saw your hand up briefly. Did you have something to add here?
Makai works with CIL Berkeley with their transportation, but I might be wrong on that, but I believe so. He's been attending a lot of my other committees, Eastern Paratransit and a few other groups that I'm with. So yeah, it should be a good resource to one of many.
Great, we look forward to connecting. Okay, let's see. Oh, before we move on to question number 4, I forgot to ask about the resources that we will be sharing with Caltrans staff. I wanted to mention, maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be a website or something written. It could be a video, a podcast. So if you have any helpful resources that are in alternative formats, we would also like to hear about those. I think somebody answered the question about where to send additional comments, and that is transportationeac@dot.ca.gov. So if you come across any helpful tips, videos, podcast episodes, feel free to send them our way as well. Okay, then our last question is, what do we want to avoid? Are there things that are kind of like, ooh, don't do this, please? So maybe they are things that have to do with our process of engaging with people, meetings, certain topics, or just generally things not to do. Member Vasquez?
Yes, thank you. I think we need to move away from the status quo. We need to move away from the old school roadway engineering ways of doing things, where we design our roads to move traffic as quickly as possible from point A to point B, where we prioritize vehicles over the movement of everything else, over the movement of people, over the movement of all the other things that can be on our roads. And so I think that when we start to open up our views for all the other things that can be on our roads and all the other possibilities, I think that that's when we start to look at all the possibilities that are out there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Member Rousey?
It's agreed with the last comment. I'm not sure if we should want to necessarily look at what we're avoiding, but what we should be doing and not avoiding, and how we look at our communities with transportation and meeting the people, their needs where they are and in their communities, and making sure that our roadways and transportation and walkable communities, all of that revert to what is really needed in our communities, and have an open mind when we engage each community as an individual community and not just throw them all into one big pile.
Yeah, thank you. Something I think we were hoping to touch on in this meeting today is making sure that when we talk about the disability community, we are including the diversity of disabilities out there. Like somebody had mentioned earlier, it can't be a one size fits all approach. There's definitely a diverse pool of needs, and thank you for mentioning that. Well, these are all the questions that we had prepared for today's discussion. Is there anything that may have, something that you'd like to add, but maybe didn't fall into one of these 4 questions? We do have some time where you can mention that now. Ms. Arnold?
I believe Ms. Arnold has already commented on the item.
Oh, in that case, would she be able to send an email with this comment to our transportation email address?
Yes, that would be recommended.
Okay, thank you.
Justin, I was under the impression that members of the public could comment on each question as part of our discussion. Would it be possible to have public comment on each item? I mean, each question?
The direction was each item on the agenda.
Okay.
But
all right, sorry, we didn't clarify that for the members of the public, but I see, Connie, your comment in the chat that you will send an email. We appreciate you sharing such detailed feedback and contributing to this discussion. We look forward to receiving the email. And I believe, let us know if you need an email address to send that comment to. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. We really appreciate all of your feedback. Okay, then let's move into our wrap up. I wanted to ask you, the EAC members, how you would like to stay involved in this ongoing effort. Perhaps you would like a follow-up meeting?
Yes, Michelle Rodriguez. Follow up, or for this committee to continue its engagement into the new year on some of these topics. Yeah, I would like to see that. I don't want it to get lost with the ending of this year's cohorts, and that we start in the new year, and so that it doesn't get lost in the new year. So yeah, I would like some sort of follow up, whether it's with this committee itself or otherwise. Thank you.
I agree with Member Rousey, though it'd be great to be able to continue the discussion here and have the follow-up at this committee.
Okay, great. Sounds great. Thank you. And then another question, what do you need to know more of? Is there anything where are you feeling like we left you with questions?
Yes, you left me with questions. And I understand your blueprint and other things, because I believe I've helped work on some of those things. But I also would like to throw that out to some of the community members that were mentioned by Connie to kind of review them and to possibly get additional input. Because it's all about the language and how you engage our communities, and whether it's the disability community, aging community, or otherwise. I think how we engage people and meet them where they are and meet their needs is important to all communities and not just the disability community. So, yeah.
Yes, thank you. Chair, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute to that question as well. I appreciate you posing that. I like to learn a bit more about how the perspectives and needs of people with disabilities is incorporated into the design process for infrastructure. What does that look like? What guides and guidelines are the engineers using when they're designing facilities? Yeah, I'd be curious to learn a little bit more about that as the conversation continues.
Okay, sure. Thank you. And then our last question, is there any interest in having follow-up speakers? Maybe we might be interested in hearing from somebody else in Caltrans, the Office of Civil Rights, or the statewide ADA coordinator. Is there anybody else that you'd like to speak on this? Member Rousey?
That would be good. Either of those or both in a combination. Yeah, because I think, although I work with the disability community in a large way for a long time, like Connie, I don't know all the intricate laws fully in detail in any way. So, I know the reference numbers of some of them, but I don't read a lot of that fine print, and I'm wondering if that's not needed, it's probably not, but at the same time, to give us a reference of how it correlates with what you're needing for as being able to access the disability community and being able to help with that outreach and how that correlates to those laws and how we do our outreach.
Okay, yeah. I think we will definitely try to get at least one person from one of these groups to join us in a future meeting. Thank you so much, everyone, for your collaboration, your input. I think this was a really successful first meeting, at least from my perspective, because you helped me answer all the questions that I had, at least while we're starting out. So thank you so much. I guess I will pass it back to Chair Torres.
Okay, thank you, Cassidy. Appreciate you. And thanks again for all the members of the public who participated and committee members who participated in that discussion. All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap up and discuss the next steps. The community engagement subcommittee will reconvene in early 2026 to continue discussion of the statewide community engagement playbook and other community engagement efforts at Caltrans, as well as other topics and data implementation for Caltrans, CTC, and CalSTA. We also have upcoming meetings. The full EAC meeting is meeting December 3rd in Riverside. And that same week, the California Transportation Commission is meeting in Riverside as well. And November 17th, the Data Implementation Subcommittee meeting is taking place. And on November 18th, Transportation Planning and Program Guidance Subcommittee is meeting as well. And all of our meetings can be found on the Interagency Equity Advisory Committee webpage. So I encourage you to follow along and join us at upcoming meetings. So appreciate you all, and we'll go ahead and close this meeting. Thank you.
Have a good holidays, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
too.
much.
Thank you.